You're listening to episode 41 of Literacy in Color. Today, we're chatting with a very close friend of mine, the wonderful Christina Winter, founder of Lead in Literacy, formerly Mrs. Winter's Bliss. Christina is a fellow science of reading advocate and supports K-2 teachers by empowering them to lead in their school communities. Through professional development, online communities, and effective, engaging resources, Christina helps teachers bring evidence-based literacy instruction to life in their classrooms. Inside her Leaders of Literacy membership, she offers ongoing support to ensure that small group instruction and literacy centers are productive, purposeful, and aligned to what the research says. She's also one of the powerhouse partners behind Unlocking SOAR, a conference that's already brought the science of reading and practical strategies to over 10,000 educators. You'll find more details about that in the show notes. But today, we're diving into all things small groups. Christina is here to lead us with practical insights, helpful tips, and strategies you can start using right away. Welcome to the Literacy in Color podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Sullivan, a science of reading advocate with over a decade of experience as a reading interventionist and literacy coach. I'm passionate about making evidence-based instruction both effective and engaging. If you're interested in captivating our learners on reading fluently and understanding language, or as I like to call it, keeping it colorful, then you've found the right place. Each week, we'll explore intriguing lit bits and practical strategies around the science of reading and structured literacy to help you be colorful and teach colorfully. Are you ready to bring literacy to life? Let's color outside the lines and make an impact together. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Literacy in Color. Today is a super special day because I'm joined with one of my very good in real life friends, Christina Winter. She is the face behind Lead in Literacy. You may know her as former Mrs. Winter's Bliss, and she's here to chat about small group instruction with us. So first of all, welcome to the show, Christina.
Oh, Michelle, you know I've been waiting a long time to come here, so I'm just super excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me today.
Of course. And it took us forever to even hit record because we just want to chat all day. So
I know, my literacy bestie.
I know. So now we're going to get into it. But before we dive into small groups, can you just share a little bit about your journey into the science of reading?
Okay, I probably have a journey similar to lots of people, all the literacy fanatics. I was a little girl who definitely knew at a very young age that I was born to be a teacher. I mean, Michelle, did you line up your stuffed animals and play teacher and have the teacher voice and all the things? So that was me. I was in the classroom for 21 years. I was also a mentor teacher, and I thrive off of being and collaborating with other teachers. And so that's why I loved being a mentor and just, guiding and working alongside other teachers. But my experience, I was definitely trained and taught with everything balanced literacy, like so many teachers that are in this community. I mean, I was everything, guided reading, 3Qing. I remember telling parents, these are sight words. Kids have to memorize them, no decoding, all the things. And then in 2020, I wanted to create a resource, and I didn't know exactly what it was going to be yet, but I wanted to create something that was helpful for students during writing, but then also capitalizing on sounds and spelling. And I accidentally discovered the science of reading because I was on the Reading League website and I watched a video by Dawn Durham, if you know her from the Reading League. So she's like my OG literacy expert hero. And since 2020, it just kind of validated some of the things that I was trying in my class. I did focus on articulation with my first graders. We talked a lot about spelling patterns. We would like karate chop words, which is really word mapping. In struggling kids, we were using decodable readers, but I was only doing that in like certain circumstances. And so when I think back now, I think, well, I kind of was onto something, but I was definitely not trained ingrained. And then since 2020, I've just been obsessed. So, we hung out at the Reading League. I can't wait to see you again in real life at the next thing, but done letters, OG certified. I'm still on the journey though. I'm listening to podcasts like yours every day. I'm going to workshops and things like that, and just really on a mission to offer teachers evidence-based resources, PD. I just want to be the teacher that I wish I had when I was in the classroom. So that's been my journey.
Beautiful. And it just shows your personality. Like you've always been that helper teacher, not just to help the kids, but to help the other colleagues that you were working with. And you're still doing that. And we're constantly learning and on this journey. And I love going down the science of reading rabbit hole right alongside you.
Yeah. And I think the more we reflect on things when we don't get it right, it's okay to not always get it right. And it's okay that I didn't do it right, but now is the time to make it right and to serve all the kids and the teachers.
Definitely. Sometimes we were doing practices that were aligned and we didn't quite know them, and it just refines your craft a little bit more, that you can put a little more intention behind what you're doing too.
Yeah.
So today we're going to be chatting small groups. And I know in a lot of science of reading conversations, there tends to be a little controversy around it now. So oftentimes when we think about balanced literacy, it was like, okay, you deliver your quick little mini lesson, and then small groups is where the magic happens for everyone. And that's where you're teaching at their level. That's where you're differentiating. Everyone's taught in small group settings, guided reading strategy groups, conferring, all the things. And a lot of people have this polar opposite view that, well, science of reading is anti-small group and we should have just whole group instruction and that's it. And that's not quite the case either.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about why small group instruction is still a critical part of effective literacy instruction.
Yeah, I agree with you. There is no debate. We know that explicit whole group instruction is definitely so important. But we also know that our kids come to us with this wide range of abilities. In first grade, we have kids coming not knowing their letters and sounds, and then some who are way beyond that on their way to fluency. So when we have small groups, we're able to target instruction. We can offer that support that they need. We can monitor student progress. We can make quick adjustments. We can give that corrective feedback that we need to give our students. And I'm sure just like you, our kids love meeting us in small group. It is high engagement time. I mean, there was never a time for me to ask the kids to come to meet me at the reading table. And they were like, no, they were so excited to work with me. And I honestly believe that in small group, they feel so successful. And Dr. Anita Archer, she has her Archerisms and she talks to us about success breeds motivation. So when kids are feeling successful, they gain confidence, they're feeling motivated, they're not as afraid to fail. They feel as like a safety net. So there's so many benefits to small group, and it just gives us that time to really target those skills to help students make progress and to catch them.
Yeah, definitely. And there's so much that we can do to differentiate our whole group lessons. So we're not just teaching to the middle and we're targeting students who may be struggling and students who need a little bit enrichment, but that definitely can't replace the small group table. And you're so right about that more individualized approach, because students, even from a social emotional aspect, they feel so special. They're getting your one-on-one attention. They're getting corrective feedback right away. They're getting increased repetitions for whatever skills you're practicing, and you're just able to get a lot accomplished in a short burst of time that's really targeting their exact needs, which is so great.
Yes.
But with that, there is still a lot of challenges that come with small group instruction. So in your experiences and with the teachers that you work with, what are some of the challenges that they face when they're trying to implement small groups?
So hearing from teachers, being an experienced teacher, seems like there's three things that teachers are always saying. And especially at this time when we're making the shift to the science of reading, and a lot of teachers who aren't trained and having the experience and leadership knowledge So teachers are feeling like, what should I actually be teaching in my small groups so that it's aligned to the science of reading? I had guided reading nailed down. Now what do I actually do? Right? And then there's some teachers who are so frustrated. This takes a lot of time to plan for my small groups. I have a lot of groups. So that feels frustrating for teachers. And then some teachers are also like, how do I actually fit all of this in? I have a very busy schedule. I mean, teachers, that's like our middle name. So how do I actually fit it all in?
I can resonate with all that too. So hands up if you're listening and you're like, what do I even teach? How do I plan for this? And how do I squeeze it in my day? Because those are all tough things to grapple with, especially when you have to teach math and social studies and science, and you need to give out the bandages after recess, and you have all those things too.
Somebody's lost on the playground, right?
Exactly.
That's real life.
It certainly is. And I know that in all your research and kind of consolidating the things that you've read and how you came to terms with small groups, you came up with a little framework that can help teachers make their small groups more effective. So first, can you give us the Cliff Notes version? And then maybe we could get into each part of it.
Yeah. So I wanted something memorable and clever, cute little bulletin board teacher. I came up with the ABCs of small group instruction. And so A is for assess. B, we're going to be efficient. And then C, we'll cut the fluff and teach the stuff. And so to me, if we can kind of remember these three pillars, then we can really have effective, engaging small group instruction and kind of like removing those challenges that teachers face for small group instruction.
I love that. And in true primary teacher nature, we all can remember our ABCs. So we have assessment, be efficient, cut the fluff.
That's right.
Let's start with assessment. So what role does assessment play in forming your effective small groups?
Well, we all know data and all of that, but really, data is our driving force. It really needs to be where we start. And so if we start with assessing our students, again, earlier you mentioned, we know what gaps they have, what deficits, and we just truly know what do they need? How can we differentiate instruction so that we can help them move forward? But when we assess students, we can also find out what students in our class have similar needs. So then we can group them. We can be more efficient. We can group them together. So when we're ready to assess, teachers might be asking, okay, well, what kind of assessment are we using? Our first step is to use our universal screeners. Usually our schools provide those. That would be like M-Class, Acadian, Stibbles, iReady, those kinds of assessments. They're scientifically based assessments. And we want to start with those. And what those are going to tell us is our core, is our tier 1 instruction, is that working? Because what we know is our tier 1 instruction should be meeting about 80% of the needs of our students. And then secondly, those universal screeners, they're just going to really give us that quick, people often say that temperature check, if our students are predicted to meet grade level benchmarks or who is at risk. Now, that doesn't mean they are failing or below benchmark, but are they at risk? It's like a quick check. Once we identify who's at risk, then we have to like dig a little deeper. I like to say like peel the onion, because then we're like, oh no, what's going on here? The engine light is on. Let's look under the hood. And we have to use a diagnostic assessment. And so that would be a phonics word reading survey or a spelling diagnostic. And we're just finding out what skills are students missing? Where are their gaps? Where do we need to start our explicit instruction so that we can teach them and they can achieve mastery? We want to give them more practice. So from that, we're going to take that assessment data. Now we're forming our small groups of like needs of students. And we're going to look at our systematic sequential scope and sequence. And that data, that assessment is giving us our clear and specific next instructional steps. We're going to be able to differentiate instruction and give our students exactly what they need. And again, we're going to build their confidence, and confidence is going to like drive their motivation. I hope you can feel how happy this makes me feel, because I know when students feel good, it's like they just are so excited to do more.
So true. And that's so helpful. And it's such a shift if you are moving from a balanced literacy approach, because typically in balanced literacy, everyone has to be assessed with reading levels in the beginning of the year. And it's so time consuming. And you're spending 20 minutes, half an hour with one kid times 25 kids, and you can't even get into instruction. And that data didn't really tell you much anyway. It gave you a letter and you grouped the letters together, and meanwhile you sit at the table and this one has a decoding issue and this one seems to have difficulty with comprehension and this one reads like a robot, and you're like, yikes.
Yeah.
So when you're truly pinpointing their needs, you can group them in a way that is going to be more beneficial to their learning. And I love how you said we can find the gaps and group students similarly based on whatever they're lacking in. So say students all need alphabet knowledge, you're going to put those kids together. The students who need CBC work, you're going to put those kids together. And your scope and sequence is really your roadmap to plug away and move forward.
Yeah. And not only that, I mean, yes, we are talking about small group instruction here, but that assessment data, I mean, think about during your whole group instruction, how that information, you know quickly that you can scaffold supports with those students during whole group instruction as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Rely on the data.
Numbers don't lie.
Unless it's your scale.
I know. Sometimes it's like, oh, you sure I want to step on the digital one? I want to go back. So now let's get into efficiency. So what are some of the non-negotiables or maybe the must-do practices that you would use in small group that promote this efficient small group model?
We already said planning for lots of groups, because let's be real, teachers have to plan for math and reading and science and phonics and social studies and interventions. So it's a lot. And teachers are reporting spending like 2 hours a week planning and then preparing for their differentiated lessons. So I hope that sharing with you, be efficient, can really help teachers to see that we can kind of cut down the planning time and just be really efficient, but not only being efficient in our planning, but also in our delivery of instruction. And so what I mean by that is the first thing that we need to do is establish our literacy block. Establish the 3 parts. And we talk about the 3 parts, like setting a guideline. Remove for teachers, we talk about cognitive load for kids all the time. But think about if we could remove decision-making and cognitive load for teachers, we can definitely cut down planning time. So say to yourself, from this time to this time is my literacy block. And during those times, I'm going to split up my literacy block into 3 parts. My first part, and lots of teachers say 90 minutes to 120 minutes. If you're a K-1-2 teacher, my suggestion is that you have at least 2 hours, because we are building that foundation. But obviously schools have guidelines and minutes and all the things, schedules. So let's imagine 90 minutes. So you have your literacy block. Your first part is your foundational skills instruction. That's your whole group, your tier 1 instruction. Everybody's getting that, your core. Right? Your second part of your literacy block is going to be your small group instruction. That's where you're following up with what we're talking about, your differentiated whole groups. And then the third part of your literacy block would be your whole group, those language comprehension lessons. That's where teachers are reading rich read aloud, students get to engage in text, build vocabulary, activate meaning, background knowledge, understanding the text, and all of that. So that again is your whole group. And then also we have to have some writing instruction, explicit writing instruction. But so now you have like this guideline. Now you're removed when am I actually going to teach this? So you've got that. And then what you need to do, or we need to do, is we have to set up consistent instructional routines. What I mean by that is you're teaching the same thing, but you're just subbing the skills out for what students actually need. So if you're teaching CBC words to this group, or you're teaching kids who are ready for val teams to this group, you have some consistent routines, a little flexible according like what you said. Like if there's some fluency issues or things like that, you can change it up a bit. But at least starting with setting these consistent routines. Now you're not having to go to Pinterest, go to Instagram, like, what should I teach? I'm teaching long vowels. You just literally know these are my instructional routines. This is what I'm going to do. I don't have to think about it. I'm just going to plug in the new skills, right? It's going to save a lot of time. And so then as you're utilizing these instructional routines, not only are we saving our planning time as teachers, but we get better at teaching. Because what's like one of the things teachers always say? Teachers always say, we're out of time, right? I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time to teach that, right? But if we can like build our cadence and get better and faster at teaching, we can like move more quickly through the routines. Our kids know the routines. We can be more efficient with our time, our instructional minutes. And then the other part of it is you have 2 little ones, you know, do they like consistency or not?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Kids thrive on consistent routines that actually thrive because we're providing them like this safety of they know what the next thing is. They're not having to guess. They're not feeling uneasiness. In fact, Dr. Anita Archer, when I was learning about instructional routines and like a workshop that she was doing, she was talking about how when we have predictable routines, that we actually see a decrease in student behaviors. And I really think it's because we're moving the uneasiness away from students, that they're acting out because they're afraid of what could happen, what might happen. I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel confident, right? And so I just think like really being consistent helps us to be really efficient. Now, I definitely want to have I want to add one more part on this. And I really, for new teachers listening, I really want you to just write it down, because we have an established guideline for when we're going to teach, okay? We have our consistent routines for what we teach, those instructional routines, those high impact routines, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But I really want to hammer this in. You got to explicitly teach, model, and practice all new routines with your students. You really have to put in the work at the beginning of the year and throughout the year to really, really hammer those routines in with your students. Because if we want our kids to be engaged, if we want them to be on task, if we want them to know exactly what we expect of them, then it almost has to be automatic. They have to know. We can never just take it for granted. So we have to build in those solid routines and expectations with our students. And then off to the races.
And then that's where the magic happens, right?
That's where the magic happens. Yes.
I love those tips. And the part in the beginning where you were talking about cognitive load, that is so true, because so many teachers, I mean, I always like to have the Pinteresting, beautiful, organized classroom myself, but so many teachers are after like the shiny object syndrome, and they see something on Pinterest and they see something on Instagram and they're like, oh, that's so cute. My students would love that. And yeah, they probably would. But at the same time, when we have that predictable structure at the small group table and students know exactly what to expect, we don't have to chase the shiny objects. Sometimes we can make that work in our routines. Like, say, part of your instructional routines includes word reading. You can use the cutesy-tootsy activity that you just saw, but you're plugging it into that structure that you already have in place. And like you said, students strive on that. They know exactly what's to come. The behaviors are minimized. And oftentimes we have students who do have behavior issues. And at the root of it, it can all come down to learning. Perhaps they're, I was just at a conference in New York City. It was targeted on dyslexia. And they were talking about particularly dyslexic boys. And they said a lot of boys with dyslexia end up being the class clowns because they would rather be funny than come across as dumb. And I was like, oh, it pulled at my heartstrings. And they said about girls who are using avoidance tactics because they have difficulty reading, they end up being the teacher's helper. So it's the one, like, oh, can I go to the office? Can I get that paper for you? Can I put it away?
Yeah.
These behaviors, this is how it's manifesting because they're trying to avoid the work.
Right. It's their mask, right? It's a mask they're
Yeah.
wearing to not be found out, right?
Exactly. And so when we do really target their needs, it's not just about teaching literacy, it's about really changing their whole trajectory because you're setting them up with changing their neural pathways and really helping them. And that can assist with the behavior aspect too. So I love that you spoke to that.
Yeah.
All right. So now we're paying homage to Dr. Anita Archer in this episode with all her Archerisms. And when you were talking about efficiency too, I was like, another Archerism, because she says, keep that perky pace. Don't let anyone.
She does. She says perky pace. I love it. You should be on everybody's wish list to see because she teaches at a perky pace. And I'm like, I hope I can be you, girl, someday. She's amazing.
She truly is. But one of her things is teach the stuff and cut the fluff. So I love that you chose that cut the fluff for your ABCs too. So if we're truly aligning our small groups with the science of reading, what are some of those high impact routines that we should include in our lessons? What kind of fluff should we get rid of and what kind of stuff should we teach?
Probably everyone who's tuning into the podcast because they are literacy advocates probably already know that the latest NAEP reading scores were disheartening to see that 69% of fourth grade students were below the proficient reading level. That hurts my teacher heart, So I think just thinking about that, we know the science does not lie. The data doesn't lie, right? The science, the facts. So we really have to embrace the findings in the field of reading science and cut the fluff, teach the stuff. We can still have fun when we do word mapping. We can use those fun little erasers that are seasonal. I see you on Instagram showing those fun little pointers and things like that. But we really got to take it seriously. And so these high impact routines, again, using that systematic scope and sequence, again, like you said, our roadmap, those are the skills that we're going to teach. We keep those consistent routines. And we want to start with phonemic awareness. We do know from the reading research that phonemic awareness, it is one of the best predictors of reading success. So if we start it as our warm-up, the skills that we're going to focus on, there are 3 of them that really matter, that drive it home for our kids. And that is isolating sounds for students, blending and segmenting. Those are like our money makers, I like to say. But those are the phonemic awareness skills that really matter. And then also for part of that instructional routine, we want to connect sound to symbol. And so phoneme graphing, or we might just call it word mapping, we want to get into that routine as soon as possible. So that is our first instructional routine. Like we're kind of warming our friends up orally and in print, getting ready to work through the next routine. We're going to be working on high frequency words. So we know research demonstrates now that we don't learn words visually like we used to think, a whole word method. And so we want to utilize those word mapping strategies. Again, connecting the sound to symbol, the phoneme to the grapheme. Rather than doing rote memorization methods. I mean, for 2 decades, I was like, here's these flashcards, learn them. And now I know like we could have actually been decoding the words and just analyzing the tricky part and learning for that irregular part. Take time to explicitly teach the tricky part to our students and just analyzing it. And students love being word detectives, right? They would love pointing that out. So moving on to blending. Blending would be our next instructional routine. And I know you are super fan, like myself, of Wiley Blevins, right?
Love Wiley.
Yeah, he's like, blending is where it's at. I feel like that's like maybe a saying he might have said. No, he says in his book, A Fresh Look at Phonics, he says it's like the main strategy for teaching students how to sound out words. But he also reminds us that we have to frequently model it and apply it, giving students lots and lots of time to blend words. And so we can use blending lines for that purpose. And what's great about blending lines is that you can create your blending lines so that you have words that are previously learned, building in the cumulative review. and then bringing in words like to front load the decodable text that students are going to be reading, giving them ample opportunity to practice blending words and sentences. You might be starting at the beginning with just saying sounds. Those could be your blending lines. Just giving kids lots and lots of blending opportunities and then moving right into decodable text, right? We want kids to have plenty of time to use all these skills that we've been teaching. And they love when they can read a book. It's so different than reading a leveled reader. They know they're actually reading. They're actually doing the work to lift the words off the page. But just giving them that opportunity to practice what we've taught in our explicit phonemic awareness and phonics instruction. But we don't have to stop there, Michelle. We don't have to just say, read this decodable. I mean, I feel like that is one of the negative things that people talk about with the science of reading is like, it's just phonics. It's not. We can talk about decodable text. I mean, there's so many great series out there that afford us the opportunity to talk about what kids are reading. You just have to kind of like read ahead and know what the text is about. So doing some comprehension work. And you can either orally discuss the story or you can do written responses, but answering questions about what students have read. You can do a writing so you can have kids summarize or retell what they read, things like that. Those are some other high impact routine. Because we do know that when kids are able to write about what they've read, it only increases their comprehension of what they have read. All right, I got two more high impact routines. Dictation. I know you love dictation too. Simply guided spelling. I mean, it feels like a big word of like, what does that actually mean? Just guided spelling practice. But what I love about dictation is that it gives us an opportunity to provide immediate corrective feedback. It's like a visible portrait of what kids are learning. And we can again, make those quick decisions, adjust instruction, give kids what they need right there on the spot. And it's a great opportunity for us to collect more informal data for our kids too, as well. And then finally, word awareness. I mean, what kids don't like things like word building, word sorts, word chaining. They're just such high impact routines, but really, really engaging for kids. And Wiley Blevins, he says that students need this time to consolidate and really to understand how words work, and word awareness activities really give them the opportunity to do that. And like I said, so engaging for kids to solve. It's almost like a game or a puzzle to solve a word ladder. Those are the high impact routines. Remember, we're creating those consistent routines so that we can build a cadence. We can get from one to the next more quickly. We're not going to teach all 8 every single day. Maybe that was a question you were going to ask, because teachers often ask me that. And we're going to teach some of them each day if we're meeting kids every day or a couple of times a week, because we couldn't do all of those every single day. We're building on what we're teaching through the day.
Those are fabulous. And I love that you shared a little bit about each one just to give everyone a deeper understanding. But going back to the perky pace part too, I'm thinking back, Julia Lindsay posted the other day on Instagram an interesting research bit. And she said, during phonics instruction, the research shows that when students have 1.8 practices, so, it's research, so we're in a fraction here, but 1.8 practices per minute based on whatever they're doing. And I was thinking about sometimes teachers sit at the small group table with their students, and it's so much time can be wasted doing silly little things. Students might be spending several minutes cutting out word cards. And it's well, if you just had them cut out already, we can get right to it. And
right.
Keep up the pacing. How many things can you already have pre-prepared so that when we're at the table, all of the learning can be super efficient and you're not scrambling and you know exactly what you're doing. They know exactly what they're doing, and they could get those practices and repetitions in too. So
yeah. And as a teacher, if you have this be efficient if you have like these consistent instructional routines and you're not having to plan. Now you're released to kind of think of things. What could I do if we're doing like word sorts so we don't have to do that? Like, okay, I can make a couple of word cards, or I could have these word cards and when my kids come in early in the morning, they can cut these out for me, or we could use magnets. Kind of like being proactive. You have some like energy to think about that because friends, like every minute counts every single day for every kid. And those numbers, that hurts my heart. We want all kids to have an opportunity to be successful readers, right?
Yeah.
So I love that. I love that.
Yeah. We got to change the statistics here, and it's going to take a little bit of time, but I truly believe we could do it. So
yes.
Back to the logistics. I love how you said we're not going to do all 8 in one session because maybe some people are like, oh my gosh, how long is my small group? But when we can break that down into smaller chunks, how many groups do you think teachers perhaps can meet with per day? How long do you think maybe an ideal lesson would be depending on your literacy block? Do you have any logistical tips? And these might not be Science of Reading based. This might be Christina Winter's based, just an experience, but just your expert teacher knowledge.
So obviously every class and school situation is different according to their schedule. I also like if you're doing walk to read model, that makes it different. If you have people pushing in, all of the things. But here is definitely one of the things I want to say is we as teachers have this feeling that we have to see everybody every day. I want to give everyone permission to let that go. And it really came to me because I felt that way as a teacher. Like it has to be fair. I have to see red group and I have to see blue group. But listen, if we are doing our job where our core instruction is meeting the needs of 80% of our kids, and then we have kids below benchmark, those are the kids who really need us. And Dr. Stephanie Stoller in Reading Science Academy, she is big on saying extra doses of instruction. So really, small group table is really extra doses of instruction. So we don't have to see kids who are meeting grade level. If they are progressing just fine in our whole group instruction, we don't have to see them quite as often. 1, 2, 3 times a week is perfectly sufficient. Because guess what? If we can spend all of our time meeting the needs of our kids who are below benchmark, how much faster could we go in our whole group instruction, right? Because we're not having to do mini small groups in our whole group. So we got to let that go. Something to think about. So I'm not really answering your questions, but the one thing I am going to say steadfast is we have to meet those kids who are below benchmark every single day. Those kids need us and we have to be with them every day. The other kids, I think that we can chat more about that another time. And then we're not going to be able to deliver those high impact routines every day, not all 8 of them. So our lessons are going to be like 15, 17 minutes is what felt really good to me as a teacher. I prioritize small groups. I loved small group time with my kids. So I met 3 groups a day. But I was lucky that I was able to have a longer literacy block. So 15 to 17 minutes for kindergarten. We suggest like 10-minute groups. That feels really comfortable for kindergarten kids.
Yeah. I love those tips too, because we don't want to pigeonhole ourselves into like, these are the exact numbers and this is the exact formula, because we're working with humans and everyone's data is different and everyone's class is different and everyone's students are different. And there can be ranges of what's normal for different classes. And I think it all goes back to your A and the assessment and letting the assessment data kind of tell you and dictate what might be necessary for your class.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
So we're going to wrap things up in a minute, but do you have any sage wisdom and final advice that you want to leave with educators who maybe are feeling overwhelmed by their current small group structures?
So feeling overwhelmed should be normalized, honestly, as a teacher, because we have a lot. And for some reason, there's this thought that teachers should just know it all and be able to do it all. And honestly, I don't know what your experience was like, Michelle, but college did not set me up to be a great teacher, right? So here's my advice. You don't have to do everything at once. Start slow. You don't have to be perfect. This is hard for a perfectionist to say, But you don't. You don't have to be perfect. In fact, you can be learning alongside your students. I hear lots of teachers saying, as they get a new program, lots of teachers are loving UFly, which is an amazing foundational skills program. And they're saying, I'm learning alongside my students. People who have purchased my sound wall resource, they're saying, I'm learning articulation, all the sound spelling patterns with my students. That's awesome, right? So the thing is, we just have to get started. It's like with anything. When you're trying to do something new, you just have to get started. And think about it. If we're just getting started, we have 180 school days with our kids. And if we're just doing a little bit every day and we're just getting started, we can only get better, right? I read James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, recently, and he talks about in his book that all big things come from small beginnings. So for any teachers who are like, oh my gosh, the ABCs of small group instruction, oh my gosh, all these things, just start small. Just start with assessment, right? And then from assessment, think about what do these kids need? And then the next week, what do these kids need? And start building it up, right? We can do it.
I believe. Christina Winter says we could do it, then we can do it.
We can do it. We can do it. And if not, you can DM me. You can DM Michelle. We are here for you. We are ready.
Happy to help. It's so true. Yeah. And it all goes back to what you said in the beginning too, when you were talking about your science of reading journey, that you're still learning and I'm still learning too. And if we waited until we had all the knowledge, then we'd be dead. And
that's right. That's right.
We gain our knowledge bit by bit, just like our students are gaining their knowledge bit by bit. And it's okay to be learning right alongside, because tomorrow we're going to be smarter and next year we're going to do it even better.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Love that. All right, Christina, this has been so wonderful. Thank you for sharing all of your small group tips with us. And I'm sure that my listeners would love to connect with you further. So where can they find you? Do you have any other small group information you can share with them?
Yeah, I would love to hang out on Instagram with your audience. So you can definitely find me at Lead in Literacy on Instagram or at my home website, Lead in Literacy. But to get your listeners started, all of those high impact routines, I have created a small group toolkit. And so it's free to download. I think, Michelle, you mentioned you could leave the link in your podcast show notes. But basically what I've done is created some small group lessons. So on the download, you'll get some sample lessons, which you can give it a try. You can look at those high impact routines. You can see how we're just going to keep those consistent, swapping out some skills, and really get some ideas on what your small groups could look like. But in addition, I want to provide you with some editable templates. So it's like, okay, I see the format. Now I'm just going to swap out the skills and make my own. So you can definitely get those. If you want the easy button, I do have a community of kindergarten, first and second grade teachers, leaders of literacy, and that is my membership. And we offer our teachers PD support, and then they have access to every small group lesson plan, student activity. It's really like, I don't know, is it Office Max, that like picture of the easy button? Basically, our teachers love that they just get to click, print, and teach, because everything has been planned out for you. Everything that you need is right there. And it's an amazing community of leaders.
You solved all those problems too. What do I teach? How do I teach it? How do I teach it? How do I? Yeah. So that's perfect. We're going to link that all in the show notes. And I love a good freebie. So I'm so excited about this small group toolkit as well. And for those of you who maybe were taking copious notes on like, what are these routines? Christina has it all ready for you to download.
I hope it's helpful for teachers just to see, okay, I can do this, right? There you go. You got started.
Absolutely. You are going to make your small group shine the next time you go around planning. So thank you again, Christina. This has been so wonderful.
So much fun, Michelle. I love that we got to chat and talk all about one of my favorite things.
Thank you so much for tuning into Literacy in Color. I hope today's episode left you feeling both inspired and equipped with something new to add to your teaching toolkit. If you're enjoying this podcast, it would truly mean so much to me if you'd leave a 5-star review. helps other educators find the show and join our colorful community. And don't forget to hit the follow or subscribe button so you never miss an episode. For more tips, tools, and resources, be sure to check out the links in the show notes at michelleandthecolorfulclassroom.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you next week. Until then, be colorful and teach colorfully.